Hi everyone. Welcome to this very special edition of Behind the Pulpit, October 11th, the 28th Sunday of Ordinary Time. I wanted to show you a behind the pulpit. So this is, some people call it a pastor's study. I call it a pastor's dungeon. And I share this space primarily with just myself and the cat that we have here. The kids, I made it a playroom down here, but they haven't really used it. My wife is allergic to cats, so she doesn't really come down. So oftentimes it's me, and this is the space that's become sacred and holy because this is where all the prayers happen, all the perspiration, all the inspiration for our worship on Sunday. And so I wanted to show you a little bit of what it looks like day to day. I usually come down here early in the morning and begin to work and have a cup of coffee and begin that prayer and the work for what happens on Sunday morning. So think of this as a sort of behind the pulpit dungeon special edition. So we continue with Job. We'll be looking at the second chapter, and the 22nd Psalm is what we'll open up with because it's the psalm that Jesus quotes when he's on the cross of God, oh God, why have you forsaken me? And sometimes we feel that. Sometimes we're low in a dark place like this dungeon, this pastor's dungeon. And we cry out to God, and I have to tell you that this is that space for me where I do most of my praying and crying out to the Lord. But the psalm ends with a reminder of to trust God because he's taken care of us in the past. He'll take care of us now. He'll take care of us in the future. So even when we feel alone, we call out and understand that God is with us. And that's why we'll sing the hymn 51, God of the Ages. Because it reminds us that this is the God that saved Jacob and Moses and the Israelites. And this is the same God that walks with us with steadfast, everlasting love. Now, we will be moving to the responsive reading this Sunday will be 660, The Way of Life. And I chose it because Jesus wants us to have abundant eternal life. And I think we get so hung up on the life after this world that we forget that when Jesus says that he is the way, the truth, and the life, that he's the way to have abundant life here and now. And that abundant life will look different than what we think in a worldly way and a secular way, but the world will be full of, and our lives will be full of our triumphs and our victories, but also our failures and our defeats. And Jesus offers a way to walk with God through suffering, through our highs and through our lows. And I think that's what Job teaches us, is that it's not about trying to understand the ways of God or trying to say who's worth receiving blessings and who isn't, but it's about how do we move through this world through highs and lows, joy and fear and suffering. And Jesus offers us that way. And so that's why we'll sing as a hymn of confession, More Love to Thee, because when we are down and out, when we are crying to God and saying, why have you forsaken me, we have to always remember the steadfast love of Christ, the steadfast love of God who sends his one and only Son to us. And so it's a call of confession to have more love to Christ. But we are continuing for the sermon. We did Job 1 last Sunday, and this Sunday we're doing Job 2. And it'll be a parallel of what happens in the first chapter, but with this one, Job begins to lose his health. And we see his reaction to that. But one of the things I wanted to focus on were his friends. And I'm going to call it the ministry of presence. A wise person once told me that sometimes all we have to offer as disciples of Christ is the ministry of presence, that sometimes words would even get into the way. And so even though these three friends that will come to visit Job and sit with him for 7 days, they sit with him in silence for 7 days, and it's really precious. But as with all of us, they can't help themselves and begin to try to come up with explanations. And we'll look at that the following Sunday, next Sunday, of these explanations that the friends have for why Job is experiencing what he is, and Job's response to that, and then ultimately God's response. But in this moment, we're going to look at that ministry of presence in Job, the second chapter. And then we will close with our hymn 486, Day by Day. Because in that ministry of presence, for some of us that are going through dark times, some of us that we're at our absolute lowest, where we can commiserate with Job and sitting in those ashes and just weeping and mourning. And we have many folks in our church who are struggling now at Bloomfield, that sometimes it really does feel like it's day by day, that you can't plan for ahead. You can't even think beyond just getting through this day. And so that ministry of presence, that day by day, and I chose the hymn too. It was written by a woman by the name of Carolina Sandal Berg, and she wrote it when her father was out on a boat and was thrown overboard, and they never found his body. He drowned. And this was the hymn that came out of that. And it was a hymn of calling to God and just asking for help, just day by day, not even thinking about tomorrow, not even thinking about months from now or years from now, but just help me day by day. And so that's really the spirit of today, of this Sunday's sermon, and the worship of how we cry out to God, but trust that He loves us, that we trust that Jesus, through His love, shows us the way to move through the world, the sacredness of the ministry of presence that we'll see in the second chapter of Job, and that ultimately we cry out to God to give us strength day by day. Well, thank you for this special edition of Behind the Pulpit, this behind the pulpit edition in the lovely pastor's dungeon, this dark, low, quiet place where so much prayer has happened and crying out to God. And it's in that spirit that I share with you this worship this Sunday, and I look forward to seeing you all. God bless.